And thank you for staying with us. We're profiling the 2017 Youthful elected leaders in the just concluded general election in Kenya. Among them is Simon Muturi, who is 24 years old. He campaigned on a bicycle and secured nomination through the Jubilee Party. He, of course, campaigned on wheelbarrow with a mounted loudspeaker, a battery amplifier and a microphone. The wheelbarrow was painted with his posters all over, and the battery was covered with curtains to shield it from the rain or harsh climate. He is the Othaya MP-elect. There's also John Paul Murigi, 23 years old, Igembe South MP-elect. Murigi is currently a third-year Bachelor of Education student at Mount Kenya University. There's also Stephen Kipyego Sang. I'm not going to be profiling all of them, but this is 32 years old, Nandi Governor. This is an elected governor, and he is a 2004-2008 undergrad student of University of Nairobi. We also have Mohammed Ali, the Nyali MP-elect, who, of course, is famed for his Jicho Pevu investigative journalism. We also have Naisula Lesuda, Nixon Korir Langata MP. We also have many more, including Ndindi Nyoro, who is with us in studio this evening. He is just shy of 32 years old, and he is the Kiharu MP-elect, and he will be, of course, sharing a little bit about his story very shortly. But let me introduce my panelists in studio this evening. The youthful MPs that have been elected into the 12th Parliament will be shaping our future for the next 5 years through the various legislations they will make and pass. Their participation is extremely key in this 12th Parliament. We'll be looking at the value they'll be adding, if any at all. With me in studio this evening, I'm joined by Raphael Obonyo. He is the convener of the Youth Congress. Thank you very much, Raphael, for being with us. We're also joined by Nerima Wako, Executive Director, Siasa Place. Thank you very much for joining us, Nerima. We're also joined by Ndindi Nyoro, who, as I said earlier, is the Kiharu MP-elect. Thank you very much for joining us, Mheshimiwa. And, of course, with us, she's not a stranger to you, Sandra Ochola. She's a governance analyst, and she's with us in studio this evening. I'll start this conversation with you, Ndindi. You are shy of 32 years, and Michael Kinyi, before he left studio, put a question to you. And not just to you alone, but to the other youthful MP-elects. You're now expected to fit in the shoes of former MPs. And for you in particular, you have Gikonyo Kiano to look up to, you have Kembi Gitura, and even Kenneth Matiba, all of who are immensely respected for their contribution in this country. For you, as the youth and as youthful MPs, what change are you bringing into the august house, apart from Kupatado, which is what Michael Kinyi said? A lot of people, a lot of people feel that a lot of you are in this for the money and for the prestige.
I don't think so from my own side, that we go there for money, because I can tell you for sure, Lydian, that most people get more money before they go to politics than after, because politics doesn't pay as much as business would. And to go back to your question about maybe what I intend to bring on board, first of all, I'm not alone in the parliament, in the next parliament, as being the youthful MP. We are many. And one thing I'm looking forward to is non-experience, because what I believe is that experience is bad when it comes to leadership. And why I say so is because most of the African countries, Kenya included, tuko pale chini sana when you look at the economic parameters. And therefore, when you have these new brains coming on board, when you have these guys coming from different sectors, I believe that kind of freshness, that kind of non-experience in itself is an advantage, because you'll be able to bring ideas that you've never experienced before, especially in the August House, and I believe that will mean progress. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about youth in politics, and especially elective politics, I believe we are not in a very peculiar position. We've always been in such a position in Kenya and globally. When you look at most of the leaders we always profile, a leader I admire so much, like Mao Zedong of China, the former chairman of CPC. He started his political or revolutionary works when he was in his 20s. When you look at Nelson Mandela at 24 or at 26, he was already an executive member of the Youth League of ANC Youth League. When you look at a man, again, I admire so much, called Napoleon Bonaparte. At 24, he was already a general in France.
It's interesting that of all the names you've mentioned, indeed, there's no
I was coming there, Lily.
Kenyan.
I was coming there because that is more important. I was coming to Kenya because it's more important. But to finish up on Napoleon Bonaparte, at the age of 35, he was already an emperor. At 36, he was already the king of, I think, Italy. Coming to Kenya, the former president, Mwai Kibaki, at my age, he was already an MP. Going again to Hasra, my friend, and one of my political mentors, William Samoei Ruto, he became the MP of Eldoret North at my age again at 31. And therefore what I believe is that when you get into politics at such an age, you have a huge advantage. First of all, to shape the agenda, but more importantly also, to learn in the game. Because the real world, you have more time to learn.
And let's give the other panelists an opportunity. Sandra, 2017 presents the best opportunity in the revolution of youth politics in Kenya. Ndindi here is talking about inexperience actually being an advantage. Have we voted in change, assuming that indeed it is the youth that gave these youthful parliamentarians a significant chunk of their votes?
Lilian, you've mentioned a word that is thrown about so many times, where not only during the political period, but even within personal conversations, change. The problem is we are yet to fully explain what this change is exactly. And for me, that is the starting point of conversation. That is the starting point of where we are going to, bring revolution, so to speak, in our politics. You look at and I'm glad he's talked about the historical perspectives. You look at the African continent, we are the fourth generation. You have the first generation of leaders who fought for independence. You have the second generation of leaders who, given their challenges, tried to take back some of the gains that, or the visions that the people who fought for independence had. Then you have the third generation that now tried to mend the ills of the second generation, bringing back issues of democracy, bringing back issues of the constitution and whatnot. And then now you have the fourth generation, which is the current leadership that we have, that is now mostly talking about prosperity. You look at Rwanda, for instance, you look at Kenya, for instance, the agenda, political agenda mostly is buttressed on issues of economic dominance. And so one of the things you see, a common thread you see running through this is that there's a common understanding of what we want. There's a common understanding of what this change is. And I think that is what, as young people, we need to define. What is our ideology? What is our value system moving forward? What are the things we stand for? So that we are not letting other people define us. We are the ones who are setting that agenda and coalescing and working together towards achieving that vision. And I hope that is one of the things that the leaders that we have, the ones we've elected, moving forward are going to exemplify.
Borrowing from what Sandra said, Nerima, these guys will be shaping our future for the next 5 years through the various legislations they will make and pass, and their participation is key. But do they understand the mood on the ground? Borrowing from our previous conversation, and you as well as Raphael, talking about issues that the youth are grappling with, these guys and their agenda for the youth, whether they actually understand what issues that the youth are grappling with.
Yes, absolutely. I believe that they do, because for a number of them, if we look at how they campaigned during this period, they used alternative means and ways. When we're talking about somebody who used a wheelbarrow, a bicycle, it's because they have that connection with their community. So it means that they understand their community needs and issues, and so they're willing to step up to that platform of leadership and take over when it comes to parliament. However, one thing that these young elected members need to understand is it's not about being a majority or being many of you within that system. It's about having to use that power in terms of influence. So I think even though a number of them are going to come in without experience, it's important to also note that there are also members within there that are youth that have experience. We can talk about Sakaja, we can talk about Ken Okoth. And these are moments that I am hoping they're going to create a caucus, in a sense where they're going to have a sense of leadership and guidance and sort of be able to use and maneuver that sort of influence to create public policy influence as well.
To you, Raphael, Naima says this is not about being the majority, it's not about popularity. A lot of these people, quote-unquote, were voted on the basis of their popularity. When you look at musicians, when you look at people who have a celebrity following, one would assume that flooring a veteran politician would come from that mass appeal that comes from somebody being a celebrity. So this not being about popularity, and the fact that for years the youth in Kenya have been commoditized, and our politicians, of course, color their manifestos with a lot about the youth problem. How then can these newly elected members of parliament bring about change? Do they understand the jargon that goes in the National Assembly, the standing orders, how rigid really this house can be? This is business. This is not about celebrity.
Thanks, Lilian. I think one of the messages that young people are sending out there by electing these youthful leaders is, look, there can never be anything for us without us. We want to be where decisions are being made. We want a seat at the table. And that's why I think many of us thought this youthful leader could provide that leadership that we want. But my hope is that the youthful leaders will not forget that youth leadership is not just defined by age. I think it should be about vision, it should be about value, it is about the courage to do what is right, even if you are the only one. And like we've always said, I mean, it is not a surprise that we have youthful leaders this time. The last parliament, National Assembly, we had the youngest National Assembly in the history of this country. If you look at the Senate, we had the second youngest Senate in Africa. But I think the good story ends there when we look at the way these youthful leaders behave, when they don't talk about corruption, when they don't talk about negative ethnicity, when they align themselves to parties more than the interest of the youth. So I hope they're going to shed off the tag of just being a member of parliament and know that young people have expectations that they expect them to fulfill. You know, the greatest crisis that we have in this country is youth unemployment. 70% of jobless people are youth. Young people expect them to solve that, and that's why they've given them a chance over many other people who offered themselves. Remember, there was only 14% of all the cleared candidates who were youth, and we are seeing a number of them who've been given that chance. So we are hoping that they won't betray the trust and the sort of the hope that young people have in them.
Ndindi, the concern of aligning yourselves to parties more than to the interests of the electorate, that essentially you are not supposed to be a mouthpiece of your party, but you are supposed to represent the interests of your constituents. We've seen a lot of other youthful senators and MPs who have never said a word in the just concluding 11th Parliament. Yeah, your thoughts on that?
The first obligation, definitely, because I was elected in Kiharu on the Jubilee ticket. And definitely we saw the president or the party leader of Jubilee and the party leader deputy president. We also elected overwhelmingly. What that means is that the electorate, those people who voted for me, and the same people who voted for the executive, they had read the manifesto of Jubilee and the alternatives, and they thought what Jubilee seeks to do for Kenyans is the right thing. And therefore the first obligation I have is first of all to help the executive, which was elected alongside ourselves, to fulfill their agenda. That means when they bring the agendas on the floor of the House, of course I have to use my common sense, but largely I have to support.
Are you nervous about being in this parliament for the very first time?
Yeah.
What are you feeling about that?
I feel good, but of course what I believe is that there is a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. And
are you concerned about the fact that some of the issues you raise might be brushed off, seeing that you're not a veteran politician? How do you intend to deal with veteran politicians and veteran parliamentarians actually dismissing you?
The issue of veteran, I think the youthfulness versus veteranism, so to say, I think the youthfulness is more an asset than veteranism, because it comes about with energy, it comes about with better articulation, and I think it's actually more advantageous to be where I am. But of course, we'll be working collectively, even with those people we are getting into parliament. And maybe to go back to where I was on the question of the party versus my own self in terms of singularity of my thoughts. I also believe, even as leaders, whether elected, whether appointed, the decay begins when we start being sycophants without thought. When we put to the shelf our thoughts and our minds, and we just start following the path just because the path is there. I believe in as much as we'll be helping our party to fulfill the agenda that they relate to Kenyans, it is also my obligation to make sure that whatever thing I say and whatever thing I do, first of all, helps the people who took me to parliament, that is Kiharu people, but I also believe I represent another bigger constituency called the youth. And I'm sure I'll be running other youthful MPs around those agendas so that whatever we take there and whatever we pass, first of all, brings about betterness and good things to the youth of Kenya.
Right.
From education to jobs to doing business, all those.
To all of you, Nerima, starting with you, what are you most worried about this lot, and what are you also very excited about? Because, truth be told, if they mess up this time round, then they're messing up for other generations to come in as far as voting patterns and how many youthful members of parliament will be elected.
Tough question. But I have to echo what Sandra has said in terms of what is the vision for young people. So I think what I am worried about technically is the fact that if our young elected members do not recognize that vision early enough, and we begin to scatter to have a vision towards the end of the 5-year term. So it's something that, as much as we talk about 2022, and a lot of people have said how the political atmosphere dynamics are changing and all that, where are the youth when it comes to that discussion or those decisions? Where do we want to be? Because as we look at our country today, are we happy with where we are? And one of the things that I know as a young person, the responsibility falls on us to be able to build a country that we feel we are proud of, and to be able to do that, we have to be also well aware that it takes work, not only for the parliament, but for the citizen as well. So just because we have voted, it does not mean that our task ends there. We have to now follow up with our leaders and hold them accountable. So those are some of the things that I am concerned about in terms of continuing to have this energy as a youth bloc and continuing to be persistent with it and heading somewhere with that goal.
And to you, Sandra, same question.
It's a list of worries. It's a list of worries, but I think I'll condense it into one and say negative political socialization, a continuity of that. Because our political socialization starts at home. What your parent says about leadership, what your mother or father believe about politics. It then goes to our schools. Are we being taught as young people? How do we engage in politics? What does politics mean to us? And then we live there, then the next people we associate with are political leaders. And this is where you find, as my colleagues have rightly said, you have leaders who are very, very detached from young people, and you only see them when you get to the election period. So once you move from the political leaders, you go to the political parties. And this is where the other set of political socialization begins, where you find older generations that do not have a retirement plan, so young people are not able to engage fully in political parties. You have within those political parties, there aren't effective and efficient systems where young people can be allowed to move up the ladder. And then you also have young leaders who are not very willing to learn from the older generation. And I think majority of them have now been branded millennials. We want things fast, we want them now, and we want them the way we want them, you know. So that learning process. So this is what you find, that we are it's a recycling. We are more or less recycling the system over and over again. And my hope is that with the young leaders elected, going to parliament, one, besides passing the laws, we are going to come down back to the voters and start working with the young people. So that vision you are talking about, that ideology, the value system, we are coming back and saying this is what we've seen, this is what the older generation has done, but then through us we'd like to do things differently. So where do we work with you? Where do we start? Do we start in schools? Are we doing it in community youth groups, so that we are speaking a different language 5 or 10 years from now, particularly with the coming generation?
Right, and Raphael, to you, same question. A chunk of these newly elected members of parliament are millennials, fairly young, very excited. So we're likely to see a lot of drama, I stand to be corrected, in the first year or so, and then we're likely to see them retreating back and sort of settling in the cocoons of their political parties. So for you, what you are concerned about, and indeed what you're optimistic about now that we have a more youthful-looking 12th parliament?
I think, first of all, the excitement comes from the fact that many of them showed courage. You know, they came forward under very difficult circumstances. Many of them didn't have resources, but they had good agenda. So, and it's also a demonstration that young people are not just a problem or people with problems, but they're also a solution. We're not just voting machines. We also want to be at the decision-making table and try to solve some of these problems that we are facing. But I think the excitement might just end there. We are cautiously excited. The fears are if these young leaders, the youthful leaders like Nyoro, like Sang, like Paul, fail to do what is right, courageously what is right, by rebelling against the bad habits of the old generation, because there are certain very bad habits of the old generation, you know, ethnic mobilization, corruption, you know, greed. If they go in there and they think that that is an opportunity for them to make wealth and not to serve the people, I think they will have betrayed sort of the hope of the people, the trust that young people have in them. Because young people have taken chances to say, look, you do not have experience, you do not have money, but we're giving you a chance to serve. Then a few years later...
But we're also assuming that it is young people that voted for these guys. That's not necessarily the case.
That is not necessarily, but largely their story resonated with our story. The only reason I could vote Nyoro is the way he connects with me, regardless of, you know, where he comes from. So to a large extent, young people took a chance with them. Of course, there are young people who still voted the other way, but I think even if young people didn't vote for them, young people have certain expectations. Remember, two things are sold during elections: hope and change. And young people see hope in these youthful leaders. Young people see change, and change from the bad norms that we've seen in the past.
We're closing now. So to you, Ndindi, by the way, congratulations. We are in no way casting doubt on your leadership or on your potential, just raising critical questions. But as you close, you know, your words to the people that voted you in, and indeed to my panelists, I'll be getting your closing remarks to that first-time member of parliament, and what you expect them to do in their first at least 100 days in office. Starting with you, as we close, your closing remarks.
First of all, I want to say a big thank you to the people of Kiharu for having a lot of faith in a young man and giving me most of their votes during the elections. And to the youth of Kenya, what I can tell them, just this week, I had tea with one man I respect a lot, called Honorable Genye Kariuki. Alongside, I was with Irogo Kangata, the immediate former MP for Kiharu. And the things we were discussing then were an eye-opener. Genye Kariuki was my mentor from the time I was in campus. He actually taught me the business I do now, stockbroking. Genye Kariuki, again, was the chief campaigner, and this is my point, was the chief campaigner of both Kiano at some point, and in some extent, chief campaigner for Honorable Matiba. Then again, Irogo Kangata, I think in 2007 or thereabout, he was the chief campaigner of Genye Kariuki. I myself was the chief campaigner of Irogo Kangata in 2012-2013 elections. What am I saying? Mentorship is very important. You cannot just say you want to lead and you are in air-conditioned offices in Nairobi. You need to get internship in the ground. That if you
so you'll be spending a lot of time in Kiharu.
But I'm calling around the youthful guys, or young people who are aspiring to be leaders of tomorrow. Kindly, do not think you'll come out from air-conditioned offices in Nairobi, go to the ground, and then you'll be able to navigate the terrain. The earlier the better. Get experience from the ground as early as now.
Thank you. Well said. Sandra, to you, your closing remarks and your messages to these first-time members of parliament, your message to these first-time members of parliament, the challenges on them now to deliver.
Congratulations to you as well.
Thank you.
And unfortunately, the spotlight is on all these guys, by the way.
Yes.
That's why I came in red.
Good. So congratulations to the newly elected MPs and the youthful ones for that matter. You did well, and you have a bigger task of going to represent those who voted for you. One thing I can tell you is that nothing is going to be given to you on a silver platter. The battles you fought on the ground are the same battles you're going to fight within the next 5 years, and it is upon you not to disappoint your electorate. It is upon you to stand for something that will ensure that future generations can look up to you with pride.
Well said, Sandra. Nerima.
Same thing almost. Well done, first and foremost. And secondly, is to learn. It's important to learn in the space that you're in, and to continuously also use experiences from past political leaders as well. That intergenerational dialogue is extremely important. However, also to be strong. As much as you are young, to be persistent. Because a lot of times as young people, we give up very quick. And that is a mentality that must change. Especially in something like parliament, bills take a very long time. And change does not come as soon as it's expected. So for me, it is to be patient, persistent, consistent, and also work together. That's very important.
And Rafa?
Yeah, I think, of course, to congratulate them. I think it's great they came forward courageously to offer their candidature, and some of them have won. I think it's really great. I hope they know that they carry the aspirations and the hopes of many young people across the country, and that the problems that young people are facing in this country are real. If you talk about youth unemployment, they are real problems. They are not imagined. They require real solutions, and young people have given them that chance. I hope they do not betray that. In terms of engaging with the various institutions, I think they must challenge, they must criticize, but they should also complement where necessary. But I hope they will do that which is right, sometimes even rebelling against the bad habits, like I say, the bad habits of the older generation, and at least putting their faith in the youth constituency.
Many thanks for that. We've been talking to a very youthful panel who have, of course, been interrogating issues surrounding the candidature of the newly elected youthful members of parliament that will, of course, be representing you in the 12th parliament. Among those is Ndindi Nyoro, who is the Kiharu MP-elect. We congratulate you once again.
Thank you very much.
We hope you're going to serve your people well. And also with us in studio was Raphael Obonyo, who is a convener of the Youth Congress. We were also joined by Nerima Wako. She's the executive director of Siasa Place. And we're also joined by Sandra Ochola. She's a governance analyst. We thank you for your time on Citizen Weekend. Have a lovely evening. My name is Lilian Muli. Good night.